Hi there, welcome to Venture Capital with me, Katie Pilbeam. This week, protests continue in Ukraine over Kiev's decision not to sign the EU Free Trade Zone Agreement. We've got our correspondents on the ground. We're going to get to them in just a minute to get the details on that one. We've also got an anniversary, 5 years since quantitative easing first began. What's the situation now, as well as that in corporate news? Ryanair is making its way to Moscow. Mr. Sean Thomas is on the way. He'll give us a sneak at his portfolio and why Bitcoin gains are great for some, not so exciting for others. So there's lots coming up, but first let's start and talk about the Ukraine. So the EU Eastern Partnership Summit in Lithuania, it kicked off this week. Ukraine's rejection of the EU's free trade zone took centre stage. Meanwhile, protests in Ukraine over Kiev's decision not to sign the deal continue. So we've got Alexey Ulyukayev in Kiev for us. We've also got Paul Scott in Vilnius to tell us exactly what's going on the ground. So, hi there, Paul. So no deal. What exactly happened?
Well, heading into the two-day summit here in Vilnius, Katie, I don't think hopes were particularly high of a last-minute U-turn. Kiev's decision not to sign the association agreement with the EU appeared to be final. The deal would be not signed, not for now anyway, and it seemed that European leaders' pressure on President Yanukovych to try and change his mind and try and sign the deal at the 11th hour, their efforts were always going to prove futile. Now, the reason that the president has given for not signing the deal is quite simple. That the financial package on offer from Brussels is not adequate for his country at this time with the country's economy in the state that it is in. And, of course, the precondition that jailed opposition leader Yulia Tymoshenko be released from jail to attend Germany for medical treatment on a bad back was always going to be a stretch for President Yanukovych as well. So, despite EU pressure here in Vilnius, the deal has not been signed, but EU leaders have been keen to stress that the deal does remain on the table and could be signed at a future date, particularly if there is a change in government in Ukraine, with the elections looming large there in 2015.
OK, a lot of conflicts going on, a lot of confusion. Let's get to Alexey, who's in Kiev for us right now. And what I want to know is, Alexey, what has the atmosphere been like all week long?
We've seen protests happening in Kiev all week long, culminating in clashes at times. People have been clearly unhappy with the government's decision not to be signing the free trade zone agreement with the European Union, even though the government has been trying to explain to the general population about the reasons why it's not doing that the Ukrainian economy already ailing, already suffering a very severe situation with 136 billion euro debt and modernizing factories in Ukraine alone to comply with the EU standards would have cost more than $100 billion, according to many experts. So the government has been trying to explain that it's not cancelling the Euro association process, it's not stepping away from the Euro integration path, it's just suspending it for the time being to work out a proper plan how to alleviate the damages and losses for Ukraine's economy. Still, this didn't persuade. Thousands have been protesting all week, and we only have to wait and see where this goes from now, because we see indications that protests are unlikely to die down for now.
OK, and Paul, what I want to know is, what has the reaction been from EU ministers, the fact that this trade deal hasn't gone through, which is what everyone was expecting?
Well, I think there's clear frustration from EU leaders here in Vilnius. You have to remember, Katie, that it's taken years of negotiations just to get to this point. Now, the president of Lithuania, of course, the country where this summit is being held, was quoted as saying that the arguments to Yanukovych to try and convince him to change his mind at the 11th hour, they didn't reach his ear or mind. And there's footage that's emerged from Thursday evening when the delegates met at a reception prior to an informal dinner, behind the scenes camera footage, and you can see German Chancellor Angela Merkel. You can just about hear her saying to President Yanukovych that the EU expected more from Kiev. So I think there's clear frustration with Ukraine from EU leaders at the moment.
Thank you for updating us there from Vilnius. We really appreciate that, guys. A real tug of war ongoing there. All right, let's now get a financial expert opinion on this one. We're going to talk to Ivan Tchakarov from Citi. Ivan, I want to know, we've heard the numbers, we've seen the people on the streets of Ukraine protesting. What do you think, in your opinion, is right for the Ukrainian economy first?
Well, as you said, the situation is interesting and actually challenging for the Ukrainian economy. I think the cold mathematics of it suggests that Ukraine probably has about a quarter to two to find some kind of financing option in order to plug in the external hole that Ukraine is facing. And in our view, the options are very, very clear. One of them is obviously to embrace the International Monetary Fund. The other is to conclude a deal with Russia, and the third option is to obviously attach itself on a longer-term basis to the European Union. So these are the options. They're very clear. They're very well known. It seems to me that that probably going to the IMF, at least from our perspective, makes the most sense at this juncture. But again, for the IMF to agree giving money to Ukraine, the Ukrainian government needs to do some very important things, including allowing a more flexible exchange rate, but much more importantly, agreeing to an increase in gas tariffs for the population.
Okay, Ivan, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate the financial viewpoint there. Now, moving on to another global trade deal that is facing collapse. The World Trade Organization is trying to pen a deal which could add nearly $1 trillion and 21 million jobs to the global economy. Among the conflicts ministers face when discussing the deal in Geneva this week are a consensus for farm subsidies and tariff reductions. Now, I asked Alexey Ulyukayev from Russia's Ministry of Economic Development, who will actually be heading to Bali himself later on this month to discuss the deal. I asked him how the negotiations are going, what he thinks of it all.
When you have closer to 200 nations, 200 economists discussing different interests in some sensitive spheres like agriculture, first of all, the most sensitive for many countries. There in Geneva, unfortunately, up to now, they couldn't get the appropriate result. Appropriate, I mean the working paper prepared for the ministerial meeting in Bali. So it means that ministers must work harder there to get results. We still have some room of going further, in which understanding we'll have a lot of meetings with the ministers to support this movement.
The Russian ruble has hit a record 5-year low due to a crackdown on the country's banking regulations, with Russia's central bank banishing banks from the market. Just this week, another top 100 bank was kicked out for not meeting balance sheet standards. This in turn leads to capital outflow. And on top of this, stronger imports ahead of the holiday season and obligations to pay off debts, also affecting the currency's fall right now. Let's talk about corporate news then, and good news for travellers. Ireland's no-frills airline Ryanair is making its way to Russia. Flights to Dublin from Moscow and St. Petersburg will start in March next year, so just in time for St. Patrick's Day celebrations. Ryanair's main rival EasyJet began offering services to Moscow from both London Gatwick and Manchester back in March this year. Russia's indebted giant metal company has been given extra time to pay back a $1 billion loan. It now has until the end of 2014, but more time is necessary for Metchel to pay their debts, which right now are totaling almost $10 billion. Sberbank has announced its third quarter profits rose by 8%. But despite this, Russia's largest lender will still slash 30,000 jobs and close 3,600 branches over the next 5 years in a bid to double profits by 2018. And now let's check in with Mr. Sean Thomas and see what he's been up to, because for the first time in venture capital history, you were in positive territory last week. You're still in the zone.
Indeed, I am. In fact, it's been a week of mixed messages. Let me talk about the rest of my portfolio first. It was Gazprom, 50% in that industry, down 4% this week. And also Eurocali. I thought I'd get into the potash market thinking that there was going to be some positive movement there. Nope, it was down 2%. But the good news, I had 25% of my portfolio in Bitcoin, and it skyrocketed. It went above the $100 threshold for the first time ever, up 69%, meaning that I gained $1,600 this week, bringing my absolute total to $12,615. I made money again despite the bad investments in Gazprom and Ulyukayev.
Wow, so Bitcoin pretty much saved the day then.
Saved the day, indeed.
Okay, right, listen, it's the 1st of December. You've got to start thinking about Christmas presents. You've got lots to buy me. I don't want you being reckless. So what are you going to do from now on? Because you've made money. We want you to continue to do so.
Right. Well, first of all, I have to point out that this is very, very tricky business. In fact, doing this week-to-week trading thing is not really advisable. In fact, again, I'm not a professional. I'm just a news guy. I'm doing this from a common sense standpoint. One of our viewers advised that if Bitcoin reaches the $900 mark, then it's an evidence that this is a bubble. So I'm going to get out. I'm going to get out of Bitcoin just to be safe. It's made me some good money. It's got me in the positive territory. So I'm getting out entirely and completely. I'm going to stay 50% in Gazprom. I don't know why. It's a gut feeling. But then also because, well, I opened up a bank account with Sberbank this week. So I figured that I'm going to go 50% with Sberbank and the financials, because getting out of Bitcoin, may as well try and get into the other side of the financial things to see if we can make some money there as well. And you're right, indeed, the holiday season, because I've made some money, a lot's got to come your way as well.
Exactly, it's an expensive season, isn't it? And okay, so you're going to be cautious. You're getting out of Bitcoin. You've done really well, but you're going to call it a day.
Indeed.
But you've got a gut feeling about your Gazprom, so a bit of
Indeed.
both there. All right, like it, Sean Thomas, there we are, in positive territory again. Love it. All right, see you next week. Good luck. Now, talking of Bitcoin, a digital wallet worth over $7 million is currently buried under a landfill the size of a football pitch in Wales. Now, the hard drive was binned by James Howes. It was by accident when he was clearing out his desk. Oh, I feel for this guy. Now, 7,500 Bitcoins. They were purchased in 2009 for next to nothing, would you believe? Now, if this makes you think that you want to be going to Wales, go digging about in this 4-foot deep rubbish, then think again, because the Newport Council spokesman has reportedly said that any hopeful treasure hunters would be turned away along with their spades. But you know what? I'm going to try and convince these Welsh councillors that I want to have a dig about. I want to see if I can get hold of this wallet. It's going up all the time. It's at 1,000 this week. I need that wallet in my life, so I'm going to go. But you know what? I will see you next week. Thank you for watching. We'll have more finance, more economics, and more fun, of course, as well. So see you then.